All right, welcome back to the night class. I'm your fun-loving teacher, Coach Knight. Today we're working on section 4.3, that is the remainder and factor theorems. They are pretty simple to comprehend, so let's get started. First thing we're going to do is learn how to synthetically divide. Synthetic division. This takes the place of long division, which we all loved the other day. Let me clean this up a little bit so there's not all this. All right, so we'll write in red. That'll work. To synthetically divide. Rather than doing long division, what made long division so hard with these, besides it being long? Why was the long division with the binomials and the trinomials so much harder than long division back in third grade? There's x's, right? The variables made it complicated. Everybody agree with that? Okay. So what the synthetic division does is it takes the complication out. It takes all the letters away, and you can focus on just the numbers. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. When you're dividing by something synthetically, you're going to take, let me make that a little bolder so you can see it a little better. All right, so you're going to make a little backwards L and put in the box here. What are we trying to divide by here? X plus 1. So that could be a factor. We don't know, right? How would we know if it's a factor? What would we get for our remainder if it's a factor? 0, right? 5's not a factor of 12 because if you divide 12 by 5, you get a remainder, right? If you don't get a remainder, 5 is a factor. All right? So same thing here. X plus 1, they're seeing if it's a factor, but we're going to use the root. If x plus 1 is a factor, what would be the root? -1. That's what goes in the box. Okay? You always put the root in the box, not the actual what you're dividing by. Okay? And to get the root is simply just doing the opposite of whatever you're dividing by. So if you're dividing by x plus 1, you're going to put -1 in the box. If you're dividing by x plus 4, you're going to put -4 in the box. If you're dividing by x minus 5, you're going to put +5 in the box. Everybody got me? Okay? Now you take all the coefficients and you write them down. Just the coefficients. Leave the variables off. Okay? Now by doing this, though, if you skip a variable, you have to put a 0 to hold its place. So what do I mean by that? You see how we're dividing x to the third minus x squared plus 2? What did we skip? We skipped just x. So you have to put a 0 there to hold that spot. Okay? Every time you skip one, you have to put a 0. So what's the coefficient of x to the third? 1. What's the coefficient of x squared? -1. Okay? What's the coefficient of x? 0. There's not 1, so it's 0. And then you have your constant 2. All right? Everybody with me? Draw yourself a little line. Make sure you have enough room to write under those numbers. And here's how you synthetically divide. Notice, no variables. Okay, we'll put the variables back in when we're done. So, you bring down the first coefficient. It's what? 1. So just bring it down. Then you say -1 times 1. What is that? You put that under the next coefficient. And then you add those up. That makes -what? 2. Again, take what's in the box, multiply it by the -2. That will be +2. Add up your coefficients. 0 plus 2 is 2. -1 times 2 is -2. Add those up. You get 0. Okay? Now it's time to put your variables back. Now, forget, like when we were doing long division, remember, did we pay attention to what was behind, or we only really concentrated on the two front ones, right? Okay? So, if you were to divide x to the third by x, what would you get?
X to the second.
X squared. So, you're going to start with x squared. You always start down here one less than what you started with in your problem. Okay? So this is going to be 1x squared minus 2x plus 2. What is my remainder?
0.
0. So I don't put, if you get a remainder, you put R6 or R7. But this one, we don't have a remainder. So it's just 0. Okay?
So you always do an exponent down?
Yes. If you're dividing the biggest one's x to the 5th, your first one down here will be x to the 4th. Okay? It's always one exponent less. Does that make sense? Okay?
Yes.
One number less. Can we say, was x plus 1 a factor of x cubed minus x squared plus 2? Yes. It was a factor because what was our remainder? 0. All right? Let's try something else. Example 3 says use the remainder theorem to find the remainder when 2x to the 3rd minus 3x squared plus x is divided by x minus 1. State whether the binomial is a factor of the polynomial and explain. So we're basically doing the same thing here, okay? But I'm also going to show you 2 ways, okay? I'm going to show you kind of the long way and then the quick and easy way, all right? You'll enjoy the quick and easy way because it kind of ties together what you should already know. And I know you already know it because you've already been answering questions that prove to me that you know it. So here we go. All right, we're going to divide. Now, like I said, I'm going to do it 2 different ways. I'm going to do just like we just did. We're going to do synthetic division again. So what goes in my box? We're dividing it by what this time? X minus 1. So what goes in the box? Positive 1. All right? What are my coefficients? 2, negative 3, 1, and it doesn't have 1, but do I need to put the 0 on the end?
Yeah.
I do, to hold the spot, okay? It doesn't have a constant, but I still got to put it to hold the place, okay? We do our synthetic division. First step, bring down the first number is 2. 1 times 2 is 2. Add these up. You get negative 1. 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. Add those up. You get 0. 1 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. So what was my biggest exponent up here? 3. So we get 2x squared minus x. Do I have to put anything else? No. Now, notice, it didn't tell me to divide it, okay? So that's my answer, but that's not what it's asking, okay? I really didn't have to put the answer. It's asking, find the remainder. Well, what was my remainder? 0. My remainder was 0, so that's my answer. Then it says, state whether the binomial is a factor of the polynomial. Is it? Yes, because we got what for a remainder? 0. So you just put 0, and then, oops, went too far. 0, and yes, it is a factor. Okay? Y'all ready for the quick, easy way?
Wait, how is it a factor?
It's a factor because the remainder was what? 0. So if you get a remainder of 0, it's a factor. If you don't get a remainder of 0, it's not a factor. Always bring it back to just normal numbers.
So the binomial is a remainder.
No, the 0 is a remainder. You don't have anything remaining.
So why does it say whether the binomial is a factor?
Correct.
So you're looking at
The 0 is the remainder.
If 0 is the remainder.
If 0 is the remainder, then x minus 1 is a factor. It's asking, is x minus 1 a factor?
It's got to be 1 minus 1. Because your remainder is 0.
No, ma'am. X minus 1 is a factor of 2x cubed minus 3x squared plus x. That's all you're doing there. Okay? Think back to numbers. Is 2 a factor of 7? No, because if you divide 7 by 2, you get a remainder. Okay? Is 2 a factor of 6? Yes, because if you divide 6 by 2, you don't have a remainder. Okay? So what this is saying, if I were to divide this by x minus 1, I won't get a remainder. Therefore, it's a factor. X minus 1 is a factor of 2x cubed. 0 is your remainder. That's how you know it's a factor. Okay? It's all right. If your remainder was 6, you would have put no. It's not a factor because we got a remainder. Okay? All right? Here's the easier way. You see what we plugged in here to divide by? Just plug it in. Y'all remember doing these the other day? When it asked, is such and such a zero of the equation? Okay. If you plug it in and you got 0, was it a 0? Yeah, same thing here. If I plug in 1, 2 times 1 cubed minus 3 times 1 squared plus 1. That's 1, so that would be 2. That's also 1, so that would be minus 3 plus 1. What does that up to? 0.
Yeah, that was quick.
A little quicker, a little easier, right? That's what the remainder theorem is stating. Okay? The remainder theorem is whatever you plug in, okay? If you're dividing by 1, if you were to plug in 1, the answer you get is always your remainder.
Okay.
Every time. Okay? So if my remainder had been 6, well, that just means if I had plugged in 1, what's my answer going to be? 6. They're always the same, which I think is pretty cool. All right? Your remainder is always the answer you get if you were to evaluate it using that number.
Is that a way that you can necessarily see if you messed up?
You can do it both ways and make sure you get the same answer. But like I said, this way is quick and easy, and so I'm gonna probably do that way first. Okay? All right? Example 4, even though it's our example 3, because like I said, we skipped the first one. Example 4 says determine the binomial factors. So, you did this a little bit yesterday, but you may not, we were solving the problem. So these are a little bit harder, but it's not a big deal. Okay, we're going to do synthetic division. And so basically we are figuring out what are the binomial factors. Now, did it say solve? Are we trying to figure out what x is? No, we're just trying to find out the factors, okay? So the first thing to figure out what the factors are, it's to the third power. So what's the most number of factors we could have? 3. That's the top, okay? That's the maximum we could have is 3 factors, okay? What are our possibilities for factors? Well, I'm going to put, this is a little secondary example here, right? I've been using this one a lot here lately. Y'all remember this? Okay, and we practice, and we say what 2 numbers multiply to be that, and add up to that, right? Okay, so what 2 numbers multiply to be -2 and add up? 2 and -1. Okay, that's +2 -1. Now, what were all of our choices for those numbers? Did we have a lot? Just 2 and 1. Now, it could have been -2 and +1, or it could have been -1 and +2. You got me? But it had to have been one of those 4. This number right here is always where you get your possible answers. You got me? Now, sometimes A might be some other number, like let's say it's 3. And what do we do with that? We multiply it, right? We come over here and we multiply that by that bottom one, okay? And then we get our choices. But for today, that's not going to be there. It's always going to be 1. So when we get our possible answers, it has to be the factors of that last number, okay? So for our problem right here, x cubed minus 7x plus 6, I know the possible factors of the entire thing are just what are the factors of 6? 1, 2, 3, and 6. And of course, it could be -1, -2, -3, and 6. So how many total choices do we have? 8. We have 8 total choices. Okay? So some teachers make you try them out by hand. Okay? Meaning I'd start with 1. I plug it in, and what am I trying to get? 0. If I get 0, hey, it's a factor. I can use it. Okay? If it doesn't, I go on to the next one. Try a -1. Okay? But I'm going to be nice. Okay? And we're going to cheat a little bit using our technology. Okay? So grab your calculator, and we're going to graph it. And when you graph it, what are you looking for the graph? Where does it need to cross? The x-axis. So go to my graph calculator, go to y equals. If there's anything there, just get rid of it. And it was x to the third minus 7x squared, right?
No,
No?
it's just minus 7x.
Oh, just minus 7x. I apologize. All right, and then what was it?
Plus 6.
Plus 6. Graph. Mine's a little out, so let me zoom out. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Zoom 6. Okay. All right. So, yes, I know that just gave away the whole answer. Okay, what are my three roots? Negative 3, 1, and 2. But remember, it's not asking us for the roots. It wants the what? Factors. So, which I can still cheat and get this. So, if negative 3 is a root, x plus 3 is a factor. If positive 1 is a root, x minus 1 is a factor. If positive 2 is a root, x minus 2 is a factor. So, I still want you to show me your work. Remember, I'm just letting you cheat. I'm letting you get 1. Okay? So, I know right now, had we tried negative 1, plugging it in, would it have worked? No, because it doesn't cross there. 1 would have. Okay? So, let's just say we tried 1 and it worked. So, what we're going to do is we're going to come back and we're going to divide by 1. Where did it go? There we go. So I'm going to put 1 in here. I'm going to do my coefficients. So the coefficient of the first one is 1. What's the coefficient of x squared?
0.
0. What's the coefficient of 7x? Negative 7x is negative 7. And then what's the coefficient, or what's the constant? 6. Write that down. Bring down your 1. 1 times 1 is 1. Add those up. 1 times 1 is negative 7. That's totally wrong. Oh no! That's terrible. It happens it happens every single time.
You can't just backspace?
No, I can't backspace because there's no backspace. Maybe, can I backspace? Hey, come on.
Dude, how intelligent mind.
You are awesome. Thank you, Candy Tilly. All right.
No, use the white. Do not
Do the backspace again, Coach Knight.
Hayes. All right.
Oh,
There we go.
Yeah,
Okay, so
redo that.
1. That was thick with 2 C's. All right.
Backspace.
So now we got negative 1 plus 1 is negative 6. 1 times negative 6 is
Negative 6.
and that we get, what is our remainder?
0.
If it's not, something's wrong, right? Okay, we divided wrong because I know this has to be a root, okay? So we're left with x squared plus x minus 6. From here, once it's a quadratic, now you can just factor it like you always have, okay? So what two numbers multiply to be negative 6 and add up to 1? Positive 3 and negative 2. So there's 2 of my binomial factors. What was the third one?
1.
But that's not the factor. Remember, that's the what?
Negative 1.
That's the root. So my factor is x minus 1. Okay? Because remember, this is the root up here, and we want the factor.
And where did you get the root from again?
I got the root from when we graphed it. Okay? And remember, I could have picked any of the 3. I could have picked the negative 3, the 1, or the 2.
So that's just what you want us to do to show our work?
Correct. That's just for you showing. Otherwise, literally, you have to go through and you say, all right, let's say we didn't start with 1. Let's say we started with negative 1.
You would have to do
I would have plugged in negative 1 cubed minus 7 times negative 1 plus 6. And I figured this out. So that's going to be negative 1 plus 7 plus 6. That's 12. So negative 1 doesn't work. And then I would try the next choice.
Too much work.
You see what I'm saying? Remember, how many choices did we have?
6. I mean,
We had 8 different choices. Now, would we go through all 8? Probably not. But we had 8 choices that were possible. Does that make sense? Okay? All right. Our last example.
Coach Knight, how'd you know you had 8 choices?
Because I took the factors of 6.
Oh, yes, sir.
So the factors of 6 are 1, 2, 3, and 6. but it's also -1, -2, -3, and -6.
Yes, sir.
Okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 total options for my answers.
Yes, sir.
They're not all answers. In fact, only how many of them were answers? 3 of them. Only 3 of them were answers. Okay? Only 3 of them were roots. Only 3 of them had factors.
That's just
The other 5 don't work.
But you can check it with the graph.
But you can check it with the graph. Correct. Okay? That's what I'm saying. That graphing calculator, really, you don't even need this at all. I'm just letting you use it to get the first one.
Yes, sir.
Okay? All right? Last example. It says, find the value of k so that the remainder of x to the third plus 3x squared minus kx minus 24 divided by x plus 3 is 0. So, we're looking for that k right there. Everybody agree? So, we want the remainder to be 0. So, I'm just going to plug in. What am I going to plug in? -3 in for, not for k, but in for x. So, -3 cubed plus 3 times -3 squared minus k times -3 minus 24. And what does all that need to equal? 0. Because my remainder needs to be 0, right? And then you simplify and work it out. So what's -3 cubed? -27? And that's happening twice, right? Actually, this is going to be what there? Positive 27 plus 3k minus 24 equals 0. Everybody see how I simplified that? -3 here squared means positive. Okay, so those cancel. If I add my 24 over, I end up with 3k equals 24, and I divide by 3. So what does k got to be? 8. So k has to be 8 in order for x plus 3 to be a factor.
So that's it?
That's it. That makes sense?
Wait.
All right. Y'all have a great day out there in online land. Welcome. I'm glad you're part of the Mathlete Nation. And y'all have a great day. Stay above the line.